It is draft day here in Montreal, and I am thrilled to be joined by my friend Chris Peters, a draft analyst for Flo Hockey. Chris, there is intrigue at the top of this draft, and I want to ask you, is the intrigue around Shane Wright, Juraj Slafkovsky at number one, is it real, or is that just being fabricated to get some hype going?
I think it's very real. I think, the Habs have done a great job of keeping the lid on who they're going to pick at number one. But throughout the week, you talk to scout sources. What are you hearing? What are you thinking? And a lot of scouts that I talked to said, you know what? I think there's a real chance they take Slafkovsky. I think there's a real chance that he's off the board. And if that happens, it really creates an interesting cascade of events that could potentially slip, Shane Wright a little bit further down the board. But I think, Kent Hughes has said, it's between, or it's they're making the decision deciding among Shane Wright, Juraj Slafkovsky, and Logan Cooley. And I do think that they're not just throwing Logan Cooley in there as a lark. I do think that there's reason for them to consider him at number one. Obviously, he's been the number one on my board before, for a long time now. And it's really tough to say. I think everything you hear on draft day, there's a little nugget of truth to some of it, and there's a lot that's just not at all true. You just can't trust. And so to see various reports of it's Slafkovsky, it's Wright. The fans seem to want to Wright. There's all these different things that are out there. But the short answer is yes. I think there is validity to the uncertainty.
It's fascinating. I'm very interested to hear what the reaction will be like in that arena if they pick Wright and how crazy people go, and if there'll be a big gasp if it is indeed Slafkovsky.
Yeah.
At number two, is there a reason to maybe believe that the Devils will not make that pick? And part two of this would be if they keep it, who do you think they could have their eye on?
Yeah, I think if Slafkovsky ends up going number one, I think it creates an opportunity for the Devils to potentially go in a different direction. Maybe force, get a trade down, try to figure out something else. See if there's anybody that's, desperately wants one of Wright or Cooley to use that pick and get some more assets. I think that's a distinct possibility. There is also the possibility. I don't think they're going to take either of the two centers if the pick comes down to them. I think it could be one of the top two defensemen. You got David Jiricek, Simon Nemec, both right shot guys. Their top D prospect in their system right now is Luke Hughes, who is a left shot, who actually can play on the right side when you need him to. But if you get a right shot defenseman like a Nemec or a Jiricek, you're getting a guy that projects to be probably in your top four in the next 3 to 4 years. So that's another option for them. I just don't think with Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, and even Dawson Mercer, who probably is their number 3 center long term. I just don't necessarily see a fit for Wright or Cooley in that front, unless you think either one of them can be flared out to wing, or if you want to move Hughes or Hischier, I don't know why you would, to wing. But yeah, there's a lot of different opportunities there.
All right. The Oilers are picking down at 29th. In your final mock draft, you had Maverick Lamoureux going in that spot, the big defenseman. Tell us a little bit about him and why you had him in that slot at 29.
Yeah, I think when you're drafting late in the first round, you want to take some swings. I think Lamoureux has a really high ceiling. Where it's just he's got a long way to go to get there. He's a total project pick. But he's big. He's 6'6". He's athletic. He was one of the top performers at the combine. The thing that gives me pause about him is the hockey sense. I don't like the decisions that he makes with the puck, but he has the physical tools to be a guy that could really, do some damage, and he can be physical and he can have some offensive ability. I just think it's going to take him a lot longer to get there. So, in a league where, and especially with the Oilers, and it's obviously a speed focused team for the most part, but then you still have that need to feel bigger and get bigger to get through some of those tough teams in the West. I kind of, I think it could go a lot of different ways. And it just felt like Lamoureux was one of those guys that you maybe take a swing on with a late first.
If they decide to go the route of selecting a forward, who are some guys in that range who maybe fans can anticipate hearing called?
Yeah, the thing about this late first round in this draft is it is going to be so unpredictable. I think there's a number of guys that could be there in that range. I think if you're lucky, maybe it's a guy like a Nathan Gaucher who is, kind of that first round, second round tweener that has gotten a lot of love recently to go higher, like in the top 20 even in this draft. But, he might slip and be there. He's a big center, two-way guy, got a good capability there. Noah Ostlund is a real wild card in this draft. He's a highly skilled center that has, he's not the biggest guy, but he's really dynamic and he makes a lot of plays. So that's another interesting guy that could be there in the late first. And then, there are obviously a lot of other guys like wingers. You look at Rieger Lawrence, Reed Schaefer, a lot of different players. Lauren's played in the AJHL this year, but I think, Schaefer is probably the guy that is most likely to be there and be a reasonable pick in the late first. He's a power forward type, good goal scoring ability, played for the Seattle Thunderbirds this year, and has been a late riser. He basically ended up slotted in the early second round for me, but I think a lot of those guys, you can make a really strong case for being a late first round pick. I just don't think there's a ton of separation between, like, say 23, 24 and even going as far as like 50 or 60 in this draft. I don't think there's a ton of separation among those players.
And that is why I think Ken Holland, for a third consecutive draft, very well could trade down, although he did kind of throw some cold water on that idea yesterday. But that's always one of those things that kind of materializes in the moment. So I still think it's worth keeping an eye on. To wrap things up, there's a name I'm very intrigued by, and you talked about him today on the Daily Faceoff show, and that's Brad Lambert. If he is available at 29, is that a guy that maybe the Oilers should look at and take a shot on, and explain why so many people are split on Brad Lambert? Because a few years ago, this was supposed to be the Wright and Lambert draft. And now is there a real shot he's available at 29?
Well, I mean, if you want to get faster, and Lambert has played center, he's played wing. I think he's a wing at the NHL level. I don't think he has the defensive detail to be a center in the league. He needs a little bit more time in order to get that to clear out. But if he's there at 29, I think there's a very reasonable case to be made to take him, because you have to, you go into that pick eyes wide open. You know that he's a bit, there are some red flags there. The things that have changed, he's been on 3 different teams over the last 3 years. There's some doubt about his hockey sense. Why are the numbers not translating to this elite skill that he has and the elite skating ability? And then there's also this unwillingness, or just a lack of consistency at getting to the interior and getting inside and making better plays. And that's why some people think that the numbers didn't come, because he was far too perimeter. He wasn't getting to the hard areas to create offense. And with that, it nullified all of those great skills that he has. So, but the thing is, if you're a team like the Oilers and you see a guy with these elite tools, there's something there to work with. There's a ceiling there. He can get to a higher level. There was a reason that we all believed he could be a top player. Now, he hasn't progressed at the same rate, similar to Shane Wright. Shane Wright has not progressed at the rate that we anticipated from 2 years ago. Same thing with Brad Lambert. But is there a way to get him back on track? If you can come at him with a development plan, and also to support him for, whatever he needs to kind of unlock those other elements of his game, he does have that significant elite trait that you're looking for. And if you can get that in the late first round, that's a high value pick. Now, he was about 25th on my final rankings for Daily Faceoff. So 29, it's not far away from there. It's a good opportunity. I think it would make sense, and it would make the Oilers a fast team that gets faster with him.
Fascinating stuff. It is really going to be an interesting night down at the Bell Center in Montreal. Look forward to all your coverage, Chris. Thanks for giving me some time today.
Thanks a lot, Tyler.